What's up, my know-it-alls? Welcome to Mr. Know-It-All Live. It's our second live stream. I'm pretty sure I got this one right. So we are streaming on YouTube as well as X, and hopefully you are here to join us. What's up? What's going on, Trek Reviewer? Hey, I love that. Hi, stranger. Yes, sir. To you as well. So yeah, man, it's been a fun trying to figure out this whole thing, but overall, I am very excited for today's show. Got a lot of things I want to talk about. Hopefully, you guys can always join me in the comments. If you want a more direct, quick route, go to youtube.com/at a real know-it-all, and that's where the live stream's happening there. You can comment, we can talk, interact back and forth. There's supposed to be a way that I can see the comments from X. I don't necessarily know how that works, so I'm still trying to work that whole thing out. Regardless, I am very excited to look back at this year. So what I'm doing is everyone else is doing best of, best and worsts, and everything else. I am one of the subscribers to the concept that I can't do a best of unless I've seen all the movies, and I haven't seen all the movies. So instead, I opted to go a different route. And so for me, the route I'm going today is the 10 best things I watched. That makes it my list, not objective in any way, shape, or form. So if you disagree, awesome. This is the time to do that. But so what is Mr. Know-It-All Live? Mr. Know-It-All Live is we're going to talk a little bit about some things. I have some stuff, obviously, we're going to do the list. Also going to talk about a story that Deadline has about kind of the streaming wars and the state of that right now, which I find to be infinitely fascinating. But more than that, I'm going to be opening up the floor to you guys. This is my lunch break. I have a day job, most like a lot of other folks, and we're only doing half day today. But either way, I'm going to be. So actually, I don't go back to work after lunch. Too bad. Anyways, but I am going to be having this discussion with you guys. I look forward to it. Hopefully, if you have thoughts about any of the things we're going to be talking about, feel free to jump in. I love. Truck reviewer asking if you are Mr. Know-It-All, where's your sidekick, Rocky Squirrel? It's a great question. Where is my sidekick, Rocky Squirrel? I do have intentions of getting Salty on the show at some point. I know that he would love to be here. Also, if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, I know the Absolute Zeros podcast just dropped our end of year episode, so feel free to check that out wherever fine podcasts are sold. And so, yeah, man, I want to get into this thing. For me, I've watched a lot of movies. I had dedicated myself to reviewing a bunch of movies this year, and I was able to meet some of that. I did more than the previous year, but not as many as I would have liked. And but also some series I've seen and some movies and different things. And so I've ranked the 10 most memorable for me, and that's between both things, by the way, TV shows and movies. And I'm sure that by the end of this is going to be some controversy. So in terms of some of my choices, so again, I will reiterate: this is in no way, shape, or form a empirical or objective list. This is literally just what Mr. Know-It-All enjoys when he watches movies and whatnot. So I am. Last episode, I talked a little bit about some Stranger Things and some other stuff, and I had a lot of pushback from folks who were like, one guy on TikTok was like, oh, so yeah, and you know what else isn't realistic? Because I was talking specifically about the Will Byers thing and how that whole situation went down, and how I didn't think it was realistic to the 80s. I said the same thing in my review, which you can also look up on the channel. And so this guy's response on TikTok was, well, yeah, but mind flayers aren't real either. And I'm like, seriously? You're going with monsters and like that's the world in which we actively do this. You're going to try to compare those things to real life. But also had a really great comment again from Victor D. Giovanni. By the way, sir, I absolutely love you. So thank you for being a member of the Know-It-All Nation. And he put a very, very clear, very detailed, and very personal response in terms of a story he had of something very similar to what the situation we were outlining, which is someone in the 80s coming out. What does that mean? Where does it stand? And ultimately, sort of the entire idea of how that could have more realistically been portrayed. And I thought that was really great. What's up? What's up, the Smoke 007? He says, Happy New Year, bro. Happy New Year to you too, sir. Very, very nice to see you. It's one of my good buddies over there from TikTok. This guy's actually a beast. If you're not following him on stuff, you need to be. He does some really cool work as well. So, and then Truck Reviewer says Salty's more Boris rather than being Rocky. True. No, he really is. All right. So, what's the first thing for me? Number 10 on my list of the favorite things I watched actually comes from Netflix. And I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I've never been a biopic person. And so I don't really watch a lot of them. Once in a while I'll catch them, but for the most part, I'm not a big fan. What I did love was they put out this really interesting self-made documentary, autobiographical documentary, I guess, about Eddie Murphy, and it's called Being Eddie. And so I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. Being Eddie is really, oh, absolutely, brother, no problem, absolutely. You are absolutely one of my favorite people to interact with. Though I wish I could interact more. So for anybody who reaches out to me often or not, it's very difficult at times to keep track, keep a schedule, do the things, all the stuff and whatnot. And so those of you who are persistent enough, I really appreciate you guys because it's just one of those things you try to keep up with things. But yeah, no. So I watched. I remember I sat down and I was clicking through Netflix and this thing came up and I said, well, let me check this out. And it's very self aware, that's for sure. And it's all Eddie Murphy does these inner reflections specifically about the what the industry was like for him coming up, being one of the first really hard popular, like everybody else in the world, black comedians in the era. So in the time when the likes of Richard Pryor and some of those other guys were there, Eddie Murphy shows up and just kicks the door down, and it was such a wonderful. Yeah, the puppet segment was so good. Yeah, so talking. There was a puppet segment in the Eddie Murphy thing where he apparently he's like his love of puppets goes back to childhood, which I had no clue. I have a puppet in there. I have one of my producers for the longest time was a puppet on the show, and yeah, man, it was such a cool thing. He had Richard Pryor and he had Bill Cosby, and it was wonderful. It was spectacular. He didn't shy away from anything. It was Eddie Murphy being Eddie Murphy, and I loved it. And he talks all about how he's interested in, he fell out of, he no longer felt the bug to do comedy after Raw. I had no clue that Eddie Murphy's Raw was his last official stand up that he'd ever done. You just don't really pay attention to that kind of thing. Because it was after Raw that I found like Delirious and some of the other smaller audio tapes, or they were the little 45s and whatnot. And then, oh, that's awesome. Smoke 007 says, my sister met Eddie on the set of Trading Places. I love Trading Places. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I use the feeling good gif all the time, which is wonderful. That's a super great movie. But yeah, when Eddie Murphy was coming up, he sort of kicked down the door. There's this wonderful segment he talks about 48 Hours, that movie that he did with Nick Nolte. And he talks about how he just committed and that nobody was really prepared for what he was going to do. So again, I love me some Eddie Murphy. He did an amazing job. And this is my 10th thing that I feel like is absolutely worth a watch if you have an opportunity. It's on Netflix. It's called Being Eddie. And it goes all the way up to when his triumphant return to Saturday Night Live and sort of the desire he had to recommit to that and really make it something special. And it turned out it really was. So if you have an opportunity, it's definitely worth the watch. I know that hands down, when I first saw it, I was blown away because again, I've really enjoyed for the longest time the just what a great actor Eddie Murphy has always been. And I feel like when you look at the history of a lot of what is in front of us today, we've got, you got Dave Chappelle, you've got, all these wonderful, you have Tyler Perry, who's really enhanced the quote unquote black experience when it comes to film and TV and stories and the whole bit. I'm from Atlanta, so of course I'm going to talk about Tyler Perry, but without Eddie Murphy and the likes of Richard Pryor and those guys like really blazing that trail, you don't get there. You don't get to that place. And so it's one of those things that when you stop and look back, you go, okay, this was special. And it really was. And I feel like when you think about the ways in which he made such an impact, you have to give him credit, period. All right. So what's number 9? Number 9 is an amazing show. It's on Amazon Prime. And, because nothing ever gets canceled over there. Of course, I'm talking about The Wheel of Time. The Wheel of Time has just been a phenomenal series. I think The Wheel of Time is such that it's one of those ones that I really feel like didn't get enough opportunity. And then Smokey asked the question, what was better, Welcome to Derry or Stranger Things? That's a great question. And actually, I sort of started to approach that last live stream. So if you get a chance, go check out that video. And it's the one with the Cyclops X-Men leak thumbnail. And in that, I remember the big thing for me is that Welcome to Derry understood the assignment from start to finish, whereas I believe Stranger Things is having some issues. They are drowning under the weight of what they've built. Or as me and several other people in my comments have said in the past, they are sort of really trying their hardest to show you something new, but they've sort of maxed out their potential. At least that's how I and several others have seen it. The let's see, Star Trek 4. Thank you, I appreciate that. See, Eddie Murphy was going to be. Chuck Reviewer says Eddie Murphy was going to be the Doctor in Star Trek, but decided he was going to do a different movie. Really? That's crazy. Or that's not Star Trek. It's Star Trek 4, rather. Huh. Interesting. I wasn't aware of that. That's very that's an interesting point for to be brought up. I had not heard that at all. So I would love to hear more about that myself. But so back to what I was saying about the Wheel of Time. When I got Mrs. Know-It-All into watching the Wheel of Time, she was very much about the um, the fantasy of it. And in fact, up to that point, our reaction video was one of the best performing videos we'd ever done. I got so much crap for us spoiling things; it was ridiculous. So much so that I really took a hard line for those videos and was like, there will be spoilers, there will be blah blah blah. Because you got to remember, it's coming from a world of books. So there's an entire audience that's like, people haven't read the books, don't spoil the books for them. And I don't know that everybody's gonna read the books, but whatever. Either way, I respected the idea of it and what they wanted to do, and that's fine. But yeah, that Wheel of Time really took the first season for me was a bit of a mess. The second season got better, and then this third season I thought was a complete win, and then Amazon canceled it. And according to them, Sony, I guess Sony still has the rights. They're the production company who made it and whatnot, and they could technically, if they wanted to, do something with it. I know the hashtag save Wheel of Time was going trending for a while, but it's so sad when it comes to really good stuff. This is one of the reasons why we get jaded, by the way, as entertainment people. And I'm sure that you guys could attest to any number of shows that you've watched that you're like, yeah, I'm not going to get into this because it's probably going to get canceled. That's really sort of what I've been. And when it comes to stuff, I tend to sometimes wait until it's all done, or at the very least until I know they've got a few seasons worth watching under their belts, and so that I can then say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and sort of go into that direction. And that's really what happened here. The acting was great. Rosamund Pike as Moraine was wonderful. They obviously did some rejiggering of the story because you have to. And that was one of the things in the very beginning of Wheel of Time that really sort of got me worried about it or whatever, was that I was like, well, how much can you do and modify this and that? And then I read a really good article it was written by the actual showrunner who explained he's got an opportunity to do the story, and there's so much story, you got to pick what part of it you're going to do. Victor asks, I roll my eyes whenever multi-season plan is laid out, never makes it to the end. Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Victor, by the way. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Sometimes it's difficult. It really is. Like, how are you going to, what are you going to get into? And then Smoke says, I was like that with The Expanse. Yeah, no, for sure. I came late to that party also because I wasn't, you don't know. You just don't know. And so as they begin, and the thing is, this season we saw such epic things, and it's so sad. But I would rather we had it than never have had it, which sounds romantic in a crazy way. But the truth is, like, what other options do you have? So would love to hear your thoughts. Did the Wheel of Time make an impact on you? Does it make any kind of list of yours? And just when you're a fantasy fan, good fantasy is difficult. There's a lot of folks out there talking about the Rings of Power. I have not watched it, though I hear the second season was better than the first. I haven't watched it because I'm such a purist, he says, though I accept the Lord of the Rings trilogy movies and whatnot the way they are. But I feel like there's a world in which you sit here and you go, okay, well, what does that all mean? when in the grander scheme of things. So anyway, hopefully it shows. What shows have you guys watched that got canceled before their time? I would absolutely love to hear and us talk more about that. But let's go ahead and look at some of the. Let's take a look at the next thing on my list is number 8, which for me, I don't know if it should even be a question because for me it was such an interesting take on this thing, and that's Alien Earth. Alien Earth is one of the first times that I believe we really took a hardcore look at an existing property and then did something new and unique with it. And for me, that's what I wanted. Now I know there are people out there with a lot of different opinions about it and whatnot, and they're like, "But it's not alien enough." Well, no, but it's in the alien world, and I feel like that's the part for me that really resonated. Victor Giovanni says about the Wheel of Time season 3 was the first time I felt it was top level. Sad it's gone. Yeah, brother, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it is sad it's gone, and it is. It felt like it finally hit its stride, which I don't know if you remember. To sort of talk about this briefly, I don't know if you remember, television back in the day was like that. People don't realize Seinfeld was not the show it ends up being until about midway through toward the end of the second season, third season. Then it became that show. It was the same thing with Friends. It was the same thing with a lot of these things. Star Trek: The Next Generation didn't arguably get into its stride till season 3, and the same thing with things like Deep Space Nine and whatnot. Whatever. My point is, back in the day, shows had time to breathe and grow. And I talked a little bit about this in my last live stream, which is when you deal with shows or things that have this level of a budget, it's really you got to hit it. You got to hit it home. It's like Doctor Who. Doctor Who, Disney was all in for Doctor Who, and then it just ends up not measuring up to what they wanted. But then then they back out of it, and that's why you're not getting any more of that. Smoke says Netflix Cowboy Bebop was cut short. Alien Earth was good. I hope they don't get lazy with the writing. I agree with you. And yeah, Cowboy Bebop's a great example. It just didn't, for some reason, hold up. I'm not really sure what that was about. Victor Giovanni says Alien Earth was great until the final episode went nowhere. Yes, agreed. That's the one part that I argued about with myself about putting it on this list, but I absolutely wanted to make sure because the show it's like 99% there for me. Every episode was a banger for me, and I thought they were showing us new things, and that's really what I want something like this to do, which is expand the lore and the mythos, not necessarily just the lore of Alien, though it is doing that, but also show us more. We've hardly ever seen Earth. Yeah, we hear about Weyland-Yutani and whatnot. You saw them in the Prometheus movies and things like that. And so getting a deeper look at that world of that Earth, I loved, and I thought it was an excellent use of this kind of a show and what that ultimately means. So yeah, I agree with you there. I feel like when you look at these kinds of, like, when you look, if entertainment is going to continue to recycle old ideas, or at the very least keep going to those wells, then they absolutely have to respect the fact that you've got to give people something new to see. Otherwise, why am I here? And that's what I felt like Alien Earth did really well. Another property which goes on my list. Hang on one second. Let me see what this. Who's coming here? Here we go. Smoke says I feel like a lot of the show starts off strong, but gets light in the writing at season's end. So it's hilarious you say that. Baby Know It All, my daughter, and we were just watching Stranger Things. And the first word out of Boyfriend Know It All's mouth when we were watching it was, "Man, the writing's really bad." And I said, okay. That might be the case. Maybe. You have to have sympathy because writing anything solid, it takes time. But when you sit here and when you start a show, you don't know if it's ever going to get renewed. So you put as much of your creativity, yourself, your heart into those first initial things. The problem you have is over time, you have to actually start backing down and playing it safe. Oh, we got renewed for a second season. Oh, we got renewed for a third season. Oh, we're looking at potentially getting renewed for a fourth, fifth, whatever. Then you start saying, okay, what do the fans want to see? What is in terms of what do they come to expect from the show? And it's less about lazy writing and more about safe writing. I do think there are shows that get lazy, absolutely, and I feel like Stranger Things did that. The Duffers got lazy in some areas, especially when you have as much time to build up our desire to want to know what was going on and whatnot. So there's that. But another franchise doing the Lord's work in terms of what we just got finished talking about with Alien Earth, which is taking a franchise in a new direction. For me, it was absolutely Predator Badlands, the movie. Predator Badlands is one of those movies that I was so surprised came out swinging the way it did, because I'll be honest, the trailers had me worried. I didn't know if I wanted to see this. I didn't know it was going to be the what it turned out to be. And then they go in, and not only do they give us, not only does Dan Trachtenberg and them give us a really excellent story, but on top of an excellent story, they give you wonderful world building in a way that I was super excited for, because because literally this is this predator's first hunt, being established, and they go to the hardest place to kill this thing. It's unkillable or whatever. I loved the Wayland Yutani backup story. I loved the incorporation of that universe. Kind of, it's so funny. It almost feels like, though sources say all over the internet, you can search it yourself, that there's no official plans to do an Alien and Predator meet. Look, anybody who knows anything about anything, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't do the level of integrated storytelling they're doing unless you're building some form of cinematic universe, unless you're going to find connection points to utilize later. And that's really what they did and what they're doing. So and it could be very much like the Marvel thing. People are like, well, these are standalone movies or whatever else. There they are until they're not. Smoke says Predator Badlands was amazing. I was talking with Dan Trachtenberg and I thanked him for understanding the assignment. Yeah, bro, absolutely. What an amazing, like he really gets it, and everything from the animated thing to this, which is the Killer of Killers or whatever, or Hunter of Killers or something. The animated movie was really good, and this was excellent. And I feel like when you put this with the same mentality that you have in Alien Earth, what you have is building really good, strong scaffolding that hopefully by the end of all of it is going to reward you in a way by giving you new things. I mean, that's what's been happening. That's what needed to have happened for a lot of these other bigger franchises. What Star Wars needs to do is honestly what Star Trek, I feel like, on some level needs to do. And we can have that conversation some other time. But yeah, that's great. Wow, that's amazing. So the other thing that I feel like when you start to look at these stories and you have to shift over to, I feel like these movies begin to ask not difficult questions, but they begin to give you something to, I think aspire to is the wrong word. But then you have something like I feel, I know this is going to be controversial because this was literally number one. This was my one of my big Predator versus Eileen. Yeah, for real. That's absolutely correct. Thank you, Victor. But the next one for me, and I know this is going to be hugely problematic for some folks, but it was Tron. Tron Ares for me was amazing. I feel like Tron Ares said, okay, we've already seen, we saw the original grid, we saw the Flynn version, and now we need to see something new. What story can we tell? I know people had issues with the lack of some of the legacy characters or connective tissue to some of that story stuff, and I feel like that's those are valid arguments. And I had an entire video. You more please go look at it. It's literally the best performing video I've ever had on my channel, where I talk positively about the movie, but I go a little more further depth about the elements thereof. But I feel like Tron said, okay, this is the lore you know. We're not going to over-explain much more. But now we're going to show you something new. And they found ways to take us into the real world and gave us a compelling MacGuffin in the code that would keep things permanent that are generated. The only issue I have is funny now in retrospect, because I own it on VOD, is the hand waviness by which they explain to you how they build the things. Because I think it's 3D printing. You don't see there's no parts and pieces. It's just digitally creating things. And you're like, okay, that's fine. So again, a bit of hand wavy in some of those parts. But when they when we went to the classic grid, I really love that. I absolutely love that. Smoke says, Tron Ares was good. Legacy was better. I wanted more with the Tron Ares film. I think Legacy was better. I think Legacy was better in its own way, and I feel like it presented us. It was what we needed at the time, and I don't have a problem with that. And I feel like the next iteration, which was Ares, did well. I think this next, if they do a fourth, which I don't see why they wouldn't, I genuinely don't. If they do a fourth, which you could easily do, there's a way to wrap it all up where you bring everything together in a really nice, neat package. Victor says Tron should be a series. Cramming a story into a typical 2 hour template results in all the things that hamstring this world. I'll go with that. I'll go with that. Yeah, doing a series I think wouldn't be a bad approach either. I absolutely think that's a brilliant move. Super smart, and I know that Smoke agrees with you, so that's great. Yeah, I think you're right. I think having a series to be able to follow and tell us a story would work well. And yeah, I would love to see that. I don't know if Jared Leto would do it. I know Leto is the reason why we got this movie at all because apparently he's a huge Tron fan. Which yeah, we'll would love to sort of. I think there's a world in which you got to dissect that more. But yeah, absolutely. I think are for sure a better way of doing that sort of thing. Yeah, I've seen some rumors that they were talking about doing another Tron animated series. In fact, there was supposed to be one after Legacy, not Uprising. I know Uprising was there, but there was one after that, which I think was supposed to bridge. If they weren't going to do another movie and with those exact characters, so a direct sequel to Legacy, then they would have done an animated series. I've seen concept art, but now again, concept art can totally be faked, and who knows if it's real or not. But I believe it was fairly real in terms of the way that it was supposed to be being the way that it was being approached or thought through. Next for me, and I know that this is definitely going to also key off some people. But the next thing for me was in terms of something that's really excellent. Tron Uprising was incredible. It was, and I stumbled on it by accident. Totally. Last story I saw was Tron was dead at Disney. Yeah, I know, Vic. I've seen the same thing. But I've also seen there are people who understand the nature of the Tron property and what it could be. So they may put it on the shelf and literally reinvent it for a new generation. I don't know how you do something like that because it's such a product of its time. So I don't know how you do that without going Matrix territory or more AI driven territory. I feel like that's a concern they should have for sure, which is how do we so if it's shelved, that's because they're trying to crack the code on it yet again. And I feel like there's a world in which you ultimately can. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, all right. The next movie for me on my list of things, which is this is number 5 for me, was it was Thunderbolts. I liked the Thunderbolts. After a dry spell of Marvel stuff that for me was not fun, that I did not enjoy, I felt like this is such a wonderful world. And I feel like they took it to a place that it needed to go. They said, everyone's used to popcorn Marvel, the colorful stuff. We're going to give you a different tone, a different thing. And that was their way of trying to signal, hey, this is a different style of team. This isn't the big positive, language and whatnot of Captain America and Iron Man and all the colors and things of the past. And they wanted to go a different direction. At least that's what I saw. True that. No, it's real. Yeah, Taskmaster was pretty well. Taskmaster was pretty. That whole situation. The thing is, I've read the leaked. There's a leaked. Sorry, that was Victor who said that. Smoke says Thunderbolts was a decent film of a popcorn movie. I have to agree. Victor says Taskmaster was more screen time. There was a leaked set of just like someone put an outline or something. And it's been confirmed by the gal who played Taskmaster that there was this version of the movie that they had actually filmed. And then when they went in for reshoots, they reworked everything for whatever reason. I don't know the details beyond that. And you end up with the story we got. But the one that they talk about would have had Taskmaster more front and center. And would have had sort of her journey through her broken memory and everything else, making friends, the whole bit. Instead, her and the team would have been more of the heart versus the Yelena and dude being the heart that we ended up getting. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Other than the fact that I feel like Marvel knew Marvel had to do one thing, and that was turn the ship around and make a movie that people wouldn't overall hate. Um, Captain America: Brave New World was good, but not great. Carl Lumley and Anthony Mackie was good, but I wanted a better story for the film. Yeah, I'll go with that. I'll go with that. My whole thing with the reason why I didn't make my list was I don't see it as a Captain America movie. Not for the dumb reasons everybody else has. I love Sam Cap. I love him. And I'm a comic person. I know the story. But for me, it was more, he felt like they sidelined him in his own movie. He felt like he was constantly playing, like reacting to other people's stuff. Other than that main set action piece, that the very, very beginning and then whatnot. But the minute you go into the whole thing with Carl Lumley, it's that brief bit is more about him. And then we shift over to the next piece and it's more about that other. It just felt like you were following, Sam was following events, not being a part of them. And that to me was the big detractor thing that I really wanted to see make happen or see get better. And that sort of didn't happen. So whatever. But yeah, I feel like in a world, Marvel needed to turn the ship around. And I feel like this movie wasn't everyone's like, it needs to make $1 billion. No, it didn't. These movies just need to be they need to functionally not suck. And by that, I mean, have stories that are clear, have a clear like set of things that they're trying to do. And it's funny. I actually feel like the end credit scene got more messy than the movie itself. I think the movie was actually pretty decent. So that's sort of where I land on that. That's why it made my list to begin with. Florence Pugh, I thought was really good in it, but she becomes almost a caricature of herself, and that's probably my downside. Is unlike say Wanda or some of the other characters who had accents in the beginning, she very much was about making sure that like they want to keep that Russian-y, cute Russian accent voice. And I guess I'm here for it, whatever. So I would have loved to have seen sort of her utilized a little better. But next we're going to go back to a series next on my list, number 4 on my list. Peacemaker season 2. I was here for it. I enjoyed it. I thought Peacemaker season 2 did an excellent job of it reestablished the work that had been done from the first season and then moved us forward within the narrative they were telling. Were there gratuitous bits that some folks have issues with? Sure. I was always there as a person who understands storytelling. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to get hung up until the end. Let me see the through line, what it means. And if it means something, then it was for the best and I'm down and I'm here. I'm good. If it doesn't, well, then we have to find something else to come up with. We'll find something else to do. At least that's my feeling. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on overall. But for me, I thought it was a solid entry. It was definitely questionable whether it needed to be the next entry right after Superman, especially when the first entry was the monster DC's Monster Squad. No, but I feel like because both were telling very mature stories, and it almost felt, I don't know, they felt like they were more congruous than Superman. That doesn't mean that everyone's like, oh, he can tell one kind of story. I love what DC's doing, and I'm here for all of it. I'm here for it. I think it's going to continue to be it's going to keep being what it needs to be, and I'm here for that. And hopefully you are too. But yeah, I thought John Cena gave what I would consider to be a really award-winning performance, especially toward the end, as you start to see more and more him breaking. And I think that's where the big, I think that's more the important part. Were the orgies and Luther's recap of prison rape necessary? Wouldn't the show have been just as good without them? I don't know. I feel like that's an academic question. And by that I mean, what would we have gotten the same level of depth? So everybody got hung up on the initial one, the big orgy scene that's literally at the end of the first episode or toward the beginning, whatever. For me, I immediately knew what they were doing. I immediately saw the dissatisfaction. John Cena conveys dissatisfaction. The things he would normally go to cope don't work, and you see that. And I was really, for me, I understood it. And I'm by the way, that isn't detraction, like, because clearly you didn't get it. No, it's not. That's never a fair assessment. Your feeling is just as valid as mine in terms of what you got from it, and I'm totally fine with that. And I feel like those are valid questions. So for me, my explanation is not an excuse or a way of telling you didn't, your opinion didn't matter. Mine's more about me saying, For me, that scene worked very clearly. Did it go a little too long? Yes, I absolutely believe it went a little too long. But I also feel like it did the job it was supposed to do, which is the wild and craziness isn't making him happy anymore. So what's left? And they mirror that with Harcourt's. She goes back to her, beaten up or getting beat up by people in bars and whatnot, and it's just not doing the same thing. People would argue, but she's clearly smiling and enjoying it. Yeah, but I think even she's we're at that place where she's realizing more and more this is not healthy. Beyond the on its face why it's unhealthy. Anyway, so would love to hear again your thoughts. So yes, I agree with you. Were they necessary? I mean, no, but yes, because to me they served the purpose that they served. With the exception of, I do agree with you. I don't necessarily know the prison rape scene was necessary, or the prison rape discussion was necessary either. So it's funny. I feel one way about one thing, but I can't run that same filter through that moment and come out of the other end of it going, oh yeah, I guess it would be valid. I don't. So yeah, but I do think that there's an awful Danielle Brooks who came back to play after having been Oscar nominated. I'm all about her, and I think her performance was amazing. And I think her being Peacemaker's best friend was such a wonderful contrast. And I think that later on in the scene that was clearly could have been problematic, she handled it super well. And then you get her and Judo Master having a very real conversation that I feel like was valid. It was a valid conversation. Do I agree with every single thing they said? No, but I absolutely found it to be valid, and I thought the scene worked very, very well. It says here, Smoke says looking forward to Lanterns. Yeah, bro, same. I am very much looking forward to Lanterns. I know that teaser scene that everybody talked about everyone's like, was this a teaser scene? Was it good or whatnot? I loved the teaser scene. I felt like that felt very much like what I envision the character to be like, and I thought that they did a great job with that. Bringing us next on the list further down, number 3, because we're in the final 3 right now, is going back to Disney Plus for Daredevil. I thought Daredevil Born Again was a good, very strong entry. Was it perfect? No. Did it have flaws? Yes. But again, when you're Marvel trying to right a ship, I feel like Daredevil came in right on time. I feel like Thunderbolts came in right on time. I feel like Fantastic Four did too. By the way, Fantastic Four gets an honorable mention on my list. It is not on my list, but it definitely gets an honorable mention for my list. But I feel like Daredevil did an excellent job. You can tell at certain points that there was another version of this show that was made, but the things that worked really work very well. And the things that don't, I kind of shove stuff off. I'm like, whatever. I feel like next season, because the whole season is going to be under this new mandate and this new outlook, will be a much more solid entry, and I'm looking forward to that. So the next season, I believe, was going to be really, really great. And Smokey, yeah, about Danielle Brooks, yeah, she said she was excellent, and you're absolutely right. So yeah, I liked some of the things I didn't like was the fact that they sidelined some of the characters that they sold us on and introduced whole new ones. But again, overall, I feel like it was trying to get its feet underneath it. I don't have a problem because, mind you, I would have loved to have seen the characters we know be the ones that are dealing with the stuff that Matt has to deal with. But at the same time, because some of those characters didn't feel earned, the discussions they were having. And but overall, I still liked what they were trying to do. I liked what the show was doing. I think Kingpin, being the mayor of New York, really built a solid foundation. Having read through, seen Shadow Wars and some of the other books that it's mirroring, I feel like that's a good opportunity to look through a lot of that story and understand a little better about who Kingpin is. Marvel's 2025 was all about please give us another chance. Lots of stuff that simply stopped sucking, and that was a win. Yes, agreed. And though it's funny, there's a whole camp out there that's like, that's because they fought against the woke, whatever. I'm not even entering that arena. For me, it was about, okay, let's go back to telling you stories you understand with characters you understand. And absolutely hope they bring back Luke Cage. Would love to see Luke. I know we're getting Jessica Jones. I feel like if there's a secret to be had, it would be that Luke Cage is returning. And I hope to God he does. So would totally love to hear your thoughts, what you guys think about the possibility of Luke Cage coming back, because I feel like if he doesn't come back, it's an absolute missed opportunity on so many levels. So I feel like as we go into the last two, hopefully, if you know anything about the channel, you know anything about me, you kind of you might be able to see a little bit about where I might be going. But for me, the number two one is Andor season two. Andor season two elevated the discussion for Star Wars. Star Wars was living under sort of the bad air of the Acolyte, which for me fell grossly short. Not because of any of the reasons that some of the other pundits out there want to talk about or lambast the thing about all the drama they had and whatnot. For me, it was about a poorly organized story. There's a version, whether I don't, it's funny. I can't even. I said on more than one occasion. Um, Number two, what could possibly be number one? You're not gonna like. You may not agree with my number one. That's fine. But remember, it's not a complete list. These are the things I found to be the most favorite for me. Andor, it really elevated the conversation in a time when Star Wars needed to genuinely correct itself. And I feel like it did such an amazing job because it took us through the world we knew and showed us new things, especially when you get to like Mon Mothma's speech, which everyone kind of leans on. But having been a person who I've seen the animated Clone Wars stuff and whatnot, I've seen some of those other things. I feel like there's a version of that speech there, and this is another speech told in that same environment. And so yeah, I'm yeah, no, I forget the same thing. Oh my gosh, it totally did. Andor, yeah, Smoke says I forgot Andor was in early 2025. Andor hit me in the feels on so many levels. It really did. It was not only was it telling a compelling story by itself, but me seeing this style of Star Wars was so wonderful. It was an actual like this made it a war. It's the first time I felt like Star Wars was at war. I'm like, because you haven't really seen a whole lot of like there were battles here and there, and you saw some stuff. I know the Trade Federation War in the first movie, but like this felt like the thing, and I was like, wow, that's okay. Wow, this is really I liked it anyway, and it really, man, the storytelling was it showed you could have complex storytelling and within a fantasy setting, because that's what some people consider sci-fi fantasy, whatever, that is compelling. And I think they really did a really home run doing it. So much so that like even now, people who are working on the director and person working on Star Wars Starfighter has said that this is really this Andor helped him really feel like he can go places with his thing, and I'm here for that. I am Clarence says Andor has probably left me the most fulfilled of anything this year on TV. Right? Yes, absolutely. Very sad. And it's funny is I knew that because I knew there was a bigger plan in the past, but then they consolidated it down, and I thought they did a wonderful job. The time jumps between 3 episode chunks or whatever I thought was so smart. So smart. It did a great job of isolating bits and whatnot. In a way that I really enjoyed. Victor says, Andor made Rogue One and A New Hope better. Bro, yes, it did. It absolutely did. That is an excellent point. Smoke says, Andor took me back to the days of Babylon 5. Yeah. Dude, those of you who remember, those who know, Babylon 5, you can watch Babylon 5, by the way, on Tubi. It's we've been doing a rewatch of it for me and Mrs. Know-It-All, because I've got this, and everyone's gonna hate me. This is not what we're talking about though. I have this desire to see if I can, using AI, update just the VFX and see what those scenes would look like in today's context, because that's the only part about Babylon 5 that ever threw me off. And that's a whole nother story. It's a whole nother thing. Don't hate me. It's literally just an exercise in my own head. Like I probably will never ever release it, but it's an exercise in my own brain because I love Babylon 5 so much. I'd love to see what modern money and modern VFX would look like doing certain things like the fighters and the actual station itself and whatnot. And I haven't really had a chance to play much with that, but yeah, so I absolutely love that. Yeah, going back to the idea of Andor again, I thought it was really, really good. I know for a fact this is going to be the one that shakes everybody up, and I'm okay with that. For me, number one really does boil down to what did I want to get out of a movie, and what for me was the perfect experience to experience to final execution thing. I have all of Babylon 5 on OG DVDs. Oh, I love you so much, Truck Reviewer. That's awesome. That's great. I absolutely love those. I feel like immediately going back to watch Rogue One is what Marvel Disney wishes all of their shows did. You know, it's so funny that you say that because we literally finished the final episode of Andor season 2, and then my wife, we all took a break for a second, and my wife came back, and I was like, and now we're gonna watch Rogue One, and it was perfect. It was seamless. It felt so good. I was so excited for it, and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, same thing. The spin-off series of Crusade, this is from Babylon 5. Crusade was amazing. I wish it would have gotten more of an opportunity. I remember watching it back in the day. Smoke says, I thank Bruce Boxleitner for his speeches in Babylon 5, especially what's going. Oh, sure. And I feel like he's done such, especially that part at the very end. The very, very end, when they show the misinformation and the mistelling of history and how those things, and Delenn shows up and is like, you guys don't even know. And she drops some facts on him. I feel like J. Michael Straczynski really looked at the future of that show. I'll have to eventually do something talking about Babylon 5. That feels more like a Nerd Fights thing, because I feel like Salty would love to do that. So I will, I'll let you guys know, because I love me some Babylon 5, and I would totally love to sort of revisit that entire experience. I think would be worth visiting. All right, number one for us, for me, again, this is me, kids. I feel like everyone's going to disappear. It was Superman. I went into this movie with a set of expectations, and for me, no movie has fulfilled those expectations so fully for me than this. I thoroughly enjoyed Man of Steel. I thoroughly enjoyed what we got of the Snyderverse, simply because it's what it is. I'm a comic book fan. I'm in the bag for these things, and I've never said a disparaging word when they were coming out and whatnot. I only have ever disparaged, if you will, the negativity that comes from who I tongue-in-cheek call the Snyder Bros, how they get so angry about stuff. But for me, I went into Superman needing it to be certain things, and for me, it was all of them. And I love, whether or not people are like, it was surface, it was this, it was that, it was the other. It kicked the door open on DC for tone. And I do believe this is the overarching tone of the DC universe. I think everything else, Creature Commandos, Peacemaker, are adjuncts to that same concept. And I feel like that's, I love you, Victor. He goes, not fighting this. It was fun and a great start to the new DCU. Thank you, sir. I feel like when you see everything that they're doing, they laid out who Clark is. They lay out the relationship with Lois. I feel like Lois was pitch perfect. Everybody was pitch perfect. Even if there are people who are like, yeah, but Perry Mason was black, or not Perry White was black, and I don't know, he's supposed to be. Perry White was Perry White. I 100%. Wendell Pierce does Perry White, and that is who I believed he was. I did not believe, like, okay, and the example I give is Lawrence Fishburne in Man of Steel. I didn't believe he was Perry White. I believe he was an actor playing Perry White. Wendell Pierce was Perry White for me in a wonderful way, in a big bad way. And I love him anyway. I think Wendell Pierce is a grossly underutilized character actor who needs to be given more opportunities. Since from Hackers, when I first saw him there as the FBI agent in charge of that group going after them. Oh yeah, back in the day. All the way to like Jack Ryan and other things he's been. I mean, I love the guy. But everything he's in is elevated by it. But so Superman had a job to do, and I felt like it did it. Let's see. Superman was fun. I totally agree with setting the tone. I think the supporting characters really made it for me. Yeah, I'll go with that. Smoke says, I thought Superman was good. I want more now for the next Superman film. Absolutely. I want Batman to have a totally different tone, so you can see the difference between the two. Yeah, that's something the comics did, and I think that's a wonderful. Oh yeah, totally. Sorry, Wendell Pierce was on The Wire, and bar none, one of his greatest roles of all time. I absolutely agree with that. But yeah, I definitely think that I want to see the difference also between the Batman, because in the comics there's a difference. So why wouldn't there be? And I feel like when they finally, it's funny, people keep holding up this one interview that James Gunn did where he was talking about. Street Preacher's like, now you show up? Yeah, bro, I apologize. Good to see you, man. But yes, thank you, brother. I appreciate you so much. There's an interview where James Gunn talked about Batman and how every story's been told in this legend, and he's not wrong. I would almost argue that because of how media has consumed Batman over the last decade or more, he would be a much more difficult a much more difficult get in order to make that work versus Superman, which he was, I think he clearly had a vision for. Victor says, I want James Gunn to chop off his R-rated and NC-17 ideas and give us PG and PG-13 DCU that rejoice in the silver aginess of it all. Yeah, I'll go with that. I can concede that. I think those are excellent points. I think you're right. I think finding a happy place, is a good idea for them in order to. Don't get me wrong. I think that Peacemaker and those things are fine. They should be the outliers. Let's get some solid, like you said, PG-13 sort of stuff from the DCU, and let's really sort of see that storytelling sensibility, not just. I feel like he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. Snyder wanted to be very over the top in terms of maturity, and I feel like he's sort of leaning a little into that as well. Um, Street Preacher says, I figured it was just a trick to get me to follow on X2. I love you, Street Preacher. That's great. Yeah. No, but yeah. So again, for me, that was the big. That was the. Those were the big. Those are my 10 favorite things I watched. And I hopefully you enjoy a lot of the same stuff because I feel like as we love all of these things, superhero movies, dramas, whatever. Because again, there's other movies I liked, but let's be honest, what's the nature of who I am in my channel? But because I've seen tons, I've seen some horror movies. I loved Conjuring Last Rites and some of that. That's what's that? I've only seen that recently, by the way, so that's why I said that. But yeah, I feel like this is a good sampling of what made my 2025 such a good. So 15 days till yeah, Section 31. Maybe it'll be better than it looks. No, 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 it won't. But no, I think that I think that a lot of these things, as you go through your year, thinking about the things that entertained you, for me, it's all about what took me away, what pulled me in, what story made me love what I was seeing and made me just check out from reality for the hour and a half or 2 hours or hour per episode or whatever. And these are the things that did it for me. And would love to hear yours in the comments. By all means, please comment whether you're on X or you're on YouTube or anything else. Just let me know. Would love to hear your thoughts. If you're watching this later on and when I cut it up on TikTok, same thing. I would love to hear what show or movie from this year was just the thing that helped you get away from it all. Victor's asked, Supergirl looks like it's going to be a it's going to be a potty mouth raunch adjacent James Gunn film. I hope I'm wrong, but the trailer made me cringe. I don't necessarily know that I think it's going to be that. I think she has a negative outlook. And I think that when you have someone like Lobo, who's so well known for his curse word adjacent words, I feel like you have an opportunity to have fun with some of that stuff. If you think back to things like Goonies and some other stuff, like there was a little bit of language there, there was some sensitive humor there, but they were very tasteful. I think there's a world in which you can do something that has a mature sensibility without going full R or being like, I'm the boss, I can do whatever I want. I want to drop F-bombs, isn't that? I feel like there's a world in which you do that, especially because Supergirl still has to talk to the girls who love superpowers and love Superman. Like, you're still talking to an audience. And I feel like if you lose them because you go too far mature, you're going to do yourself a disservice. And I feel like there's a huge bit of that that needs to be sort of looked at. Oh, sorry, hang on one second. I missed this first one. Kill Bill, the whole bloody affair was incredible to watch in IMAX. I believe that. Oh my gosh, the whole thing sounds amazing, especially because he got an opportunity to really sync the story together in a way that the studio wouldn't let him, being Tarantino, because originally it was supposed to be one thing, but they didn't want to do a 4-hour movie or whatever else. So he ended up having to come up with stuff to make it work. And so I think that's what's wonderful. Street Preacher says, F1 was great with my Atmos setup. Very cool. Where's Pluribus on this list? I haven't seen it yet. It's literally on my list to see. I'm finishing up. I'm going through Severance right now. Pluribus is next because that kind of TV I got to really get into a headspace for, because I'm so used to chewing gum that when you suddenly drop a steak in front of me, I'm like, whoa. Okay, so just that's where a lot of that stuff is. Street Preacher says he enjoyed the long walk. Yeah, bro. The long walk was I thought the long walk was excellent. Mark Hamill getting to Mark Hamill, and then some really interesting storytelling. And as a post-apocalyptic thing goes, I thought they did a really good job. I thought it a lot better for than a lot of things could have done in that whole thing, and I'm really for it. Schubert says, and Eddington just watched not what I was expecting. Fair, totally fair. You're not the first person to tell me that, by the way. I have a cousin who watched it and said the same thing. Victor says, my issue is that we're 4 titles in the DCU, and 3 of them are edgy, and only 1 is fun, family friendly. Fair. That's a fair assessment, and I think we need to definitely see moving forward what they're going to be doing and how it's going to happen. Smoke says, I look forward for Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Same. I just got finished putting them on my production calendar for next year, mainly because when you do this kind of stuff, it isn't just Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. It's, okay, let me do my retro review of the original Street Fighter or whatever. And same thing with Mortal Kombat. Let me do whatnot. So, but yeah, I'm excited for those. I feel like Mortal Kombat is taking itself more seriously than Street Fighter, even though Street Fighter arguably is dead serious because of how everybody looks. My problem is the original Street Fighter made everybody look really close to how they look, and I don't know, and that was sort of laughed at. So it may be a little too on the nose in some ways. Here we go. Coquelette says 28 years later was good. Indeed, very much so. Looking forward to, and here we go. 28 years later, and Sketch were my top. Oh, Sketch, wonderful movie. Excellent movie. Yeah, man. Loved it. Way more better than I anticipated it being. I loved it. Street Preacher talking about, sorry, Begonia was good, but not something I ever need to watch again. I hear that. Right on. I do have to. It's on my list of things I'm supposed to check out eventually. I had an opportunity to see a screener and didn't get to do it. So the link had expired. But I have a friend of mine who used to do this work more for like a newspaper up in Chicago, and he sends me stuff he gets once in a while because he's out of the game now. Street disappointments were Spinal Tap 2 and Naked Gun. I liked Naked Gun. I really did. I liked Naked Gun. I thought Naked Gun did a really good job of harnessing that energy from the firsts. I'll be honest, I don't know that I needed to ever see it in theaters. I think I would have been very happy having just seen it on VOD later. Sinners, top tier 2025. Agreed. Sinners is excellent. I feel like Sinners is such a good movie. And it's one of those movies that even though it's not my necessarily, because it's about vampires for those you don't know. If I spoiled something for you, sorry. But I think that the way they did it, melding real life in terms of the history and what was going on with that story, and then down to the very end, which did a classic trope, which is a long time, years later, revisiting certain characters. I thought they did it better than a lot of others. A lot of the like the old Interview with the Vampire type stuff and whatnot. I feel like that movie did such a wonderful job with that. Let's see. Adolescence was 2025. That was the show of the year. Adolescence is excellent. Adolescence is excellent for sure. Street Preacher says Warfare was great. I have heard this. I have not seen it. It's on my list of stuff I need to catch. Definitely, look, Spinal Tap 2 enjoyed this guy. Thank you so much, Ika Clud. And yes, R.I.P. Rob Reiner for sure. What a heartbreak that whole thing was. I never really got a chance to talk about it because I was going through some different stuff at the time. But yeah, Rob Reiner, us losing Rob Reiner, we've lost a master, an absolute master. And not just a master, but a good person in terms of who he and his wife were at their core as people, and movie makers beyond, people who set the course for much of Hollywood for a good chunk of a lot of the movies you love growing up or coming up are exactly that. And I think that's a huge thing to think to experience. So yeah, definitely R.I.P. Rob Reiner. Street Preacher, need to watch Misery again. Right on. No, for sure. Smoke says Wednesday was great for TV this year. Wednesday was excellent. I love Wednesday. I think Wednesday did a wonderful, wonderful job of being the show it needed to be. And I liked the fact that I was really worried that it was just going to be kind of anthological in terms of season to season. But season 2 really wrapped nicely around season 1 in a way that I don't think weighed it down, and if you only watched it, you had all the context you needed. But I feel like since I did watch it, it was much more fulfilling, and that's kind of the promise that series should do. It's one of the reasons why I'm so bitter right now towards Stranger Things, and I'm really hoping they land the against my better judgment, I hope they land the ending. So, and then let's see. Victor says Rob Reiner had the greatest unbroken 7-movie run of any director in Hollywood history. I absolutely agree with you, sir. Absolutely agree, hands down. Street Preacher, isn't that the one they race swapped? I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no. Sorry, there's a different conversation going on. I did watch Doctor Who. This year, Um, there's reviews for it and everything. I felt like these episodes didn't nearly get as much as love as they should have got, but they also got a lot of the hate that they deserve to get. Not for the reasons people do. I felt like if you're gonna have the Doctor in anything, you need to have something that can commit to it, and they never really did. Chudi Gatwa I never felt like he committed to the role in a way that I wanted him to. Um, Strange New Worlds left Smoke hot and cold this year. Yeah, I can feel you on that. It was hit or miss for me too, which I'm like, you know what? That's okay. It had two solid first seasons. The first two seasons were solid for me. I feel like this is just a third season slump, and they're gonna go into the next one and be strong. And you'll get. I feel like 4 and 5 are gonna end really strong for Strange New Worlds. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not so much looking forward to Starfleet Academy, but I'm going to be here for it because I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm a reviewer, and I'm going to talk about it. And I know that people on my channel love them some Strange New World. So, yeah, right. No, I got you. That's the whole right. Done with Star Trek as serious entertainment. Street Preacher comes from another world in which, like, where we talk a lot of Star Trek over at Nerd Fights, and he's a holder. He came over from there, but I don't know, man. I'm still here for them. I think that they're doing good work. I don't have a problem with any of that stuff. Yeah, Doctor Who was again overall. I really wished for more from this last season. I really do. Full Trek reboot from scratch. Here we go. I'm ready for a full Star Trek reboot from scratch. No Kelvin timeline shenanigans anymore. Yeah, I think just dedicate, commit, and say this is what we're going to do, and do it. And I'm here for that too. I think that works. I don't see why you wouldn't do it. Partway through the Jodie era. That's for sure. Strange New World was good for me overall, but it definitely has a few clunkers. It did. Again, it did. And a lot of some story things I would have no more triple timelines. Yeah, that's for sure. Absolutely. No more of that. The Jodie stuff was good, but yeah, no, the Jodie. So my Jodie Whittaker, when it comes to being a Doctor Who fan, I actually did like her a lot. In fact, I've told people this. My reaction to her being chosen or announced was used in the welcome package when they introduced her to the world at the big event they do. And I was excited for it. Victor says, I gave up on Doctor Who and it went from black and white to color. Fair. I get it. I want Trek like Picard season 3. So in Nerd Fights, that's a controversial take. I agree with you, sir. I am absolutely with you. I would have loved to have seen the legacy show they were pitching, or that had been kind of bandied around a little bit. But I'm also here for if they soft reboot everything and give us, Star Trek with Kirk and them with using. I mean, here's the thing: you don't cast a big time player to be McCoy for the last episode if you're not doing something moving forward. And I feel like that is absolutely where they're going. So, all right, guys, listen, man, this has been a good one. I've been so excited, guys. I really appreciate those of you who jumped on. And I look forward to doing this again. Don't forget, Friday, we're going to have Nerd Fights. That's going to be in the evening. So hopefully you'll be around for that. And then next week on Monday and Wednesday again, we're going to have Mr. Know-It-All live yet again. Patrick Williams on YouTube just did a great 3-part series on legacy sequels. I know, it was excellent. I watched it. But yeah, man. All right, guys. I will talk to you again soon. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all. Bye, guys.